Jesse Pomeroy, a name that would become synonymous with terror and brutality in the late 19th century. The name itself sends shivers down the spines of those familiar with the annals of true crime. His story is one that has been etched into the dark history of criminal psychology. Born in 1859, this seemingly ordinary boy from Boston, Massachusetts, harbored a chilling secret, a proclivity for violence that would awaken before he even reached his teenage years. Boston, a city bustling with life and progress, was unaware of the dark storm brewing within one of its youngest residents. Even as a child, Pomeroy displayed disturbing tendencies. His behavior was not just a phase or a cry for attention. It was a manifestation of something far more sinister. He was known for torturing animals, a grim foreshadowing of the horrors he would later inflict upon his human victims. This early cruelty was a harbinger of the monstrous acts that would soon follow. His cold, emotionless gaze unnerved those who crossed his path. It was as if he lacked the very essence of humanity, a void where empathy should have been. It was as if a dark cloud followed him, a palpable aura of menace. Wherever he went, an unsettling feeling seemed to linger in the air, a premonition of the darkness he carried within. Whispers of Pomeroy's disturbing behavior spread through the community. Neighbors exchanged worried glances and hushed conversations, trying to make sense of the young boy's actions. Some dismissed it as the mischief of a troubled boy. They believed he would grow out of it, that his actions were merely a phase of childhood rebellion. Others, however, sensed something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface. They saw the darkness in his eyes, the lack of remorse, and felt a deep, unshakable fear. They were right to be afraid. The signs were there, clear as day, for those who dared to look closely. The community's unease was not unfounded, for within this seemingly ordinary child, a monster was slowly taking shape, a monster that would soon reveal itself in the most horrifying ways imaginable, leaving an indelible mark on the history of crime. The year was 1872. Jesse Pomeroy, barely 14 years old, committed his first confirmed act of unspeakable cruelty. His victim, a 4-year-old boy named William Payne. Lured to a secluded area, the helpless child was subjected to a brutal and sadistic assault at the hands of the teenage monster. Pomeroy's methods were shockingly vicious. He beat the young boy mercilessly, leaving him battered and broken. The attack sent shockwaves through the community. Who could commit such an act, let alone a boy barely old enough to shave? Fear gripped the neighborhood as parents kept their children close. The hunt was on for the perpetrator of this heinous crime. Little did they know the monster was already walking among them, hiding in plain sight. 2 years later, the nightmare returned. In April 1874, the mutilated body of a 10-year-old boy named Horace Millen was discovered in the swamps of South Boston. The details of the crime were too horrific to print, sending a collective shudder through the city and beyond. The brutality of the murder pointed to a killer devoid of empathy or remorse. The investigation intensified and suspicion soon fell upon a familiar face, Jesse Pomeroy. He had been seen near the area where Horace was last seen alive. When questioned, Pomeroy's demeanor was chillingly calm. He denied any involvement, but the evidence against him was mounting. Finally, after intense interrogation, he confessed to the murder of Horace Millen and the assault of William Payne. The monster had been unmasked. Pomeroy's confession was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a chilling revelation that opened the floodgates to a series of dark and horrifying discoveries. The initial shock of his admission was only the beginning, as investigators soon realized they were dealing with a far more sinister and complex case than they had ever imagined. As the investigation continued, a horrifying truth emerged. The deeper they delved into Pomeroy's past, the more they uncovered a pattern of violence and cruelty that spanned several years. Each piece of evidence painted a more gruesome picture, revealing the extent of his malevolence. He was linked to a string of assaults on young boys in the Boston area, dating back several years. These were not isolated incidents, but part of a calculated and deliberate campaign of terror. The boys, often lured into secluded areas, were subjected to unimaginable horrors. The full extent of his crimes was staggering. Each new discovery added to the growing sense of dread among the investigators. The sheer volume of cases and the brutality involved left them reeling, struggling to comprehend the mind of such a young yet profoundly disturbed individual. The victims, all young boys, bore the physical and emotional scars of his brutality. Their lives were forever altered by the trauma they endured. The community, too, felt the weight of these atrocities as the safety and innocence of their children were shattered. Their stories painted a chilling portrait. In December 1874, Jesse Pomeroy stood trial for his crimes. The young boy, only 14 years old, faced the grim reality of the courtroom, a place where his fate would be decided. The trial was not just a legal proceeding, it was a spectacle that drew the attention of the entire nation. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere thick with tension and disgust. People from all walks of life came to witness the trial of the boy who had committed such heinous acts. The air was heavy with anticipation, as everyone waited to see how justice would be served. The prosecution presented a damning case, detailing the gruesome nature of his attacks and the sheer terror he inflicted upon his young victims. They meticulously laid out the evidence, piece by piece, painting a horrifying picture of Pomeroy's actions. The jury and spectators were visibly shaken by the graphic descriptions and the cold, hard facts. The defense attempted to portray Pomeroy as a victim himself, a product of a broken home and a troubled mind. They argued that his violent behavior was a result of his upbringing and the lack of proper guidance. They pleaded for leniency, suggesting that Pomeroy could be rehabilitated if given the chance. However, the jury was unconvinced. The evidence was overwhelming and the nature of the crimes was too severe to overlook. The jurors listened intently, weighing the arguments from both sides, but the horrific details of the case left a lasting impression on their minds. After deliberating for just 2 hours, they returned with a guilty verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman read the decision. The weight of the verdict hung in the air, a testament to the gravity of Pomeroy's actions. Jesse Pomeroy was sentenced to death by hanging. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom, sealing the young boy's fate. The sentence was a reflection of the era's harsh stance on crime, especially one as brutal as Pomeroy's. The sentence sent shockwaves across the nation. Newspapers ran headlines that captured the public's shock and disbelief. Conversations in homes, taverns, and public squares were dominated by the news of Pomeroy's fate. Never before had a child so young been condemned to death. The case was unprecedented, raising questions about the justice system and its treatment of juvenile offenders. People grappled with the idea of a child being held to the same standards as an adult in the eyes of the law. The case sparked a heated debate about juvenile justice and the very nature of evil. Was it right to sentence a child to death, or should there be a different approach to dealing with young offenders? The discussions were intense, with strong opinions on both sides. Was Pomeroy truly a monster, or was he a product of his environment, a boy who could still be rehabilitated? The philosophical debate about nature versus nurture took center stage as people tried to understand the root causes of his behavior. The questions lingered even as the date of his execution approached. The nation watched with bated breath, knowing that the outcome of this case would have lasting implications for the future of juvenile justice. The story of Jesse Pomeroy remains a haunting reminder of the complexities of crime and punishment.